the way of warriors, and what it is that makes an army, what it is that sets the UPDF apart, because they have, by the grace of God, garnered a very strong and good image in the country and also in the region. And it's not something we can take for granted as a nation, coming out of, by the time the NRA and the UPDF came to be, we were coming out of a lot of hardship in terms of really confused and armies that were in disarray and so on. So we greatly value the UPDF and the members of the armed forces. We're very happy to have you here.
Thank you, thank you. And a rejoinder that it's very, very important to have the heritage, especially of the armed forces, but the people's armed forces. We need to get that heritage preserved. So you are doing a very, very important, playing an important role in preserving our heritage. Because if we don't tell our story, others will tell it in a distorted way. Thank you very much. I'm not a very, I can't call myself a very old historical monument, but I am part of the sad history of this country. When I am born, it was when we were getting independence. And as a young person, I witnessed episodes that really were the beginnings of the sad story Uganda is going to suffer. Because when, for example, the 1966 crisis unfolded, I was just a P1 student, but I remember staying with my grandmother, and at 3 p.m. in the evening, they were telling us to go and sleep because army trucks were traversing the whole village because the Kabaka of Uganda was running away and they were following him. So as young people, it was strange that you were being told to go and hide. So I picked that. It was strange, but as a young person, of course, you don't follow up. But when Idi Amin took over, I was in primary 5, and it was vivid because that night we were told to go back home and be in bed at 5 in the evening. And my dad stayed a bit outside, and he came bleeding because now he violated curfew. So he was beaten, and as a young person, I see my dad bleeding. It was so strange, but a new era had come in. A soldier had taken over, and just a few months after the takeover of Idi Amin, the real Idi Amin visited our district, and I could see really a disaster. He visited Kabare. He actually came to our school, Kigeza High School. He came to open the HSC wing. He took a speech which would have ordinarily taken like 15 minutes. He read it for 3 hours. And even we children of P5, we could say, this is a disaster. How can such be our president? But we are young, but we could see something wrong was going on in our country. The following 2 years, he held an execution. He killed one of my uncles. There was a public execution in town. Some of the Fronasa, when Idi Amin took over, Museveni went, and of course he started recruiting. And some of the recruits were from Kabade and were arrested in 1973. So when Amin decided to have public executions, he took people to their villages, their hometowns. And all schools were closed in February 1973. I remember 10th February. We were told to go to the stadium to witness how people are being shot publicly.
Oh, the schools.
All children, old and young, were told to go and see because Amin wanted to instill fear. That's now when I begin to actively, politically have a side that this Amin has to go. Now, we were lucky, Amin was overthrown. And by luck, our school is the only school in southwestern Uganda which didn't close. So soon after Idi Amin, now the liberators started coming to talk to us, to tell us UNLF, Uganda National Liberation Front, what it means. But we started noticing two tendencies. Some people who were, I think, UPC, their message would be confusing. But the Fronasa cadres, I remember the first one to come was Katabarwa. When he talked, we fell. He said, we shall form People's Army, we shall form militia. We are so energized. That time, Museveni hadn't come, but he was already Minister of Defense. But we would hear his talk, and we were beginning to differentiate. There were mixed messages, but you would hear a message which is talking for the future, and another message which was not clear. People saying we shall show them and so on. Because earlier on, they would be sectarian. So the UPC, when they came back, you would hear that tendency. They were still dividing the people. Now, the first time I saw President was when he came accompanying Bishop Chivenjere. When they killed the Archbishop, Bishop Chivenjere fled into exile because Amin wanted to kill him also. So when liberation came, Bishop Chivenjere came. So the Minister of Defense came representing government. So that's when we saw him. We were hearing about him.
Minister of Defense by that time was
Museveni. Now, when he came, Bishop Chivenjere made a statement that he loves Idi Amin. So some of us got confused. How does he love Idi Amin, who nearly wanted to kill him? And Trust Museveni also, he opposed it. He said, Bishop, I am opposing you. You can't love Idi Amin. Idi Amin is a bad man. So we piqued interest. Then I think like the following day, he stayed and addressed a public rally. So we students went and we listened. He was saying, we shall in future have an army of the people. We shall have a smaller force, but the people will be trained to have a reserve. Those things attracted us. And later, of course, UNLF started having turbulence. And we were beginning to have sides. We would be debating. And later, when Obote came back, we listened to his message, we refused. So I remember when UPM was launched, I was a member. I don't know how I became a member, but I became a member. By the time, because the launch was in Kampala, the next rally, national rally, was in Kabale, and I was the chief mobilizer there. History is long, but I became, and we were a minority, but very vibrant. So when the elections came, for us, we were even not registered. They refused us. We were at Makerere. We went to Kabale to register. They closed the registration centers. We spent like a week going and bouncing. They would say, registers are finished. Kumbe, they didn't want, because they knew the youth are going to vote UPM. So I remember Dr. Rugunda telling us, you go back, you will do mobilization. Don't worry about these UPC programs where they want to cheat elections. So when elections eventually came, some of us didn't vote, but we were big mobilizers. Now, we were listening to the message, if these elections are rigged, Bush. And for us, we were ready for the Bush. I remember when they announced that, of course, DP, they first announced, the radios, outside radios were saying DP has won. All of a sudden, an announcement came stopping Electoral Commission from announcing results. So we who were young students, in the university, we knew this is a coup. So we went, I remember we went a big group to Dr. Rugunda's residence. You've said we are going to the bush. Where are the trucks? I remember he laughed and said, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. We shall oppose Obote, but he is not going to make us run out of our country. We were so annoyed. We wanted to go that day because the president had told us, if election is cheated, we are going to the bush. So for us, we wanted to go that day. So this was December. You can see December, January, until we went back to university. The anger had cooled a bit. Then one evening, we had the big bang. Kabamba has been,